So welcome back to another episode of the BioHub. Today, we're really excited to host Amit Kumar, CEO and Chairman of Anixa Biosciences. Amit brings a wealth of experience with his roles as CEO of CombiMatrix, GFF, Executive Chairman and Co-founder of Actym Therapeutics, and now CEO and President of Anixa Biosciences. With over 2 decades of leadership roles in biotech, Amit is now steering Anixa to develop therapies and vaccines that are focused on critical unmet needs in oncology. Amit, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you very much, Tom, for having me.
Good. So to jump straight in then, so I guess you've had a fascinating journey in the biotech field. Can you provide a bit of an overview of your career so far, how you got started in the field?
Sure. It's similar to many other people in the field. I was trained as a scientist. I had an opportunity to study at some of the best universities in the world, frankly, and have been doing research since I was a freshman in college, and was always interested in research. Though I have to say, I was focused more on physical chemistry and material science and condensed matter physics than I was on molecular biology and immunology. But when I was doing my postdoctoral training at Harvard, I had an opportunity to listen to a seminar and speak with a brilliant scientist named Judah Folkman, who has passed now, but he had this innovative new idea on how to address cancer. At that time, it was new. Today, that idea is the subject of many multi-billion-dollar drugs that are used in cancer therapy, and I got very fascinated by that, and that led me to an interest in biotech and biology and molecular biology. And so, my first job out of Harvard was a small startup company in the biotech space, which had coincidentally licensed some of the technology that I had invented at Harvard. And so I went there, and the rest is history.
Good. And why biotech? What inspired you to pursue a career in biotech?
Well, I think, as I noted, I've always been interested in research, and I became interested in biotech simply because it has such an impact on people's lives. And I've had the fortunate opportunity to have developed a number of products that have definitely impacted people's lives. In fact, in other situations, I've had some employees come to me and tell me that some of the products that my previous companies have developed helped them with certain things that they were going through. And so that's a really, really nice thing to hear. And I'm hoping that the projects that we're working on now will have an equal or even bigger impact on society.
Yeah. So Anixa are developing therapies and vaccines that are focused on critical unmet needs in oncology. In terms of any recent developments at Anixa, can you share any expansions, milestones that you guys have achieved?
Oh yeah, there's a lot to talk about there. We have clinical trials in a number of different areas that are ongoing right now. One of which is a CAR T therapy. CAR T is a new type of immunotherapy that has done some pretty amazing things for late stage, essentially terminal leukemia and lymphoma patients. But CAR T has not been successful in any solid tumors. And we think that we have the first CAR T therapy that is going to be successful in solid tumors, initially focused on ovarian cancer, but perhaps many other cancers as well. And we have a clinical trial ongoing here in the United States with that therapy. We've only treated a few patients, 6 at the current time, and at very low doses. But we're already seeing some indications that our therapy seems to be working. Now, as we go forward and we treat more patients, we're looking forward to seeing the impact of the therapy on multiple patients. And these are effectively terminal ovarian cancer patients that have failed pretty much all other therapies, and they're just looking for something that could help them survive. And we're there, and we're ready to try and help these patients, and we're looking forward to the trial continuing. We're also developing, in collaboration with the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio, a vaccine for breast cancer, which is designed to prevent breast cancer. And we're near the completion of the phase 1 trial, and we're planning to begin the phase 2 trial sometime next year. And we're looking forward to the results of that trial. That trial is being funded by the U.S. Department of Defense. Many people ask me why the Department of Defense, but the DoD has some money in its budget to fund revolutionary new technologies that could be potentially game changing. And so we're working on that. And again, we're also looking forward to additional data from that trial as we go forward.
Nice. And yeah, I mean, the cell therapy space, there's a lot of companies, I guess, Legend and Kite and Poseida, Caribou, that are in a similar sort of space to you guys. How can you explain a bit behind the science? I guess maybe how it's differentiated as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. There are a lot of cell therapy companies. And one of the companies you mentioned, Kite, was acquired for $12 billion a few years ago because it had developed one of the early cell therapies that have been approved for, again, as I noted, leukemia and lymphoma. Now, the unfortunate thing is that this type of cell therapy, CAR T therapy, and CAR T stands for chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapy, has not worked in solid tumors, which is if it does, it's a much bigger impact on the cancer population. But there are a number of theories about why cell therapy like this has not worked on solid tumors. And our therapy addresses many, if not all, of these issues. And specifically in the case of ovarian cancer, we are utilizing a combination of a receptor or antigen that exists on ovaries that our T cells are going to be targeting. And we're targeting that receptor using a natural hormone, which over millions of years of evolution has become a good binding pair for that receptor. And so we actually call our cell therapy, internally, we call it instead of CAR T therapy, we call it CER-T, C-E-R-T therapy, because the receptor hormone combination is an endocrine combination. So E stands for endocrine. It's a little side note. But anyway, that's a unique characteristic of our cell therapy. Another characteristic, which I think is going to be very powerful and will enable us to utilize this cell therapy for other types of cancer besides ovarian, is that this particular receptor is found on the blood vessels of many different types of cancer. And so our cells that are targeting that receptor will potentially destroy the blood vessels of many tumors. And, by destroying the blood vessels of those tumors, you make it impossible for the tumors to bring in nutrient and take out waste. And so those tumors potentially will die. And so that mechanism is also operating, we believe, in our ovarian cancer trial. So in the ovarian cancer case, we think there's a dual mechanism of action. In other types of cancers, it'll be focused on the anti-angiogenesis mechanism, which is the destruction of blood vessels. But we're not starting clinical trials there until we've gotten further along in the ovarian cancer situation. And then the third key attribute, which I think is incredibly important for ovarian cancer, is that when a woman gets ovarian cancer and it spreads, the tumor lesions tend to spread to other organs that exist in a sort of a sac that exists in our lower torsos called the peritoneal sac. So it's a membranous compartment in which the ovaries exist and many other organs. And so when ovarian cancer spreads, it tends to spread into other areas of that sac, other organs, and even the membrane itself. And so in our case, to date, we have delivered the T cell therapy directly into the peritoneum. We put a port in essentially a doorway into the peritoneum, and we inject the cells directly into the peritoneum. So they're in the vicinity of all of the tumor lesions, and they don't get into the bloodstream. What people have seen with traditional delivery of CAR T, which is through IV delivery, intravenous delivery, is the moment you deliver these T cells into the vein, it gets all over your body, gets to the brain, gets to the heart, all over the place, and potentially causes aggressive side effects, intolerable effects that often may even kill the patient. In our case, we're delivering it directly into the peritoneum, so it doesn't get into the bloodstream and go all over the body. It stays in that peritoneal sac and tries to address the tumor lesions in that peritoneal sac, which is typically where most of the lesions, if not all, in ovarian cancer exist. And so not only do we have a therapy that goes directly to the tumor lesions, but in the end, we think we can go to a much higher dosage, higher concentration, because the T cells don't go into the bloodstream and cause all sorts of deleterious side effects. So those three characteristics we think will enable this to be a very successful therapy. We've already had some really good success for one patient, and the other patients in the therapy are unevaluable, unfortunately, for a number of reasons. But we're looking forward to increasing the dosage in additional patients as we go forward. So that's a really long answer to Tom, but this is a complex therapy,
Yeah.
and we're really looking forward to hoping this will work successfully for many patients.
Yeah. I guess just to the market in general right now, it's obviously so difficult out there. I speak to companies all the time that have great leadership team, good science behind them, but I guess the biotech fundraising market in particular is just so hard. What trends in the industry do you find most intriguing at the moment, and how they could potentially shape the future of the field?
Well, I think on the financial side, as you noted, it's a very difficult time to finance companies that are developing these innovative therapies. But I think that will change over time. Everything is cyclical in these markets. And unfortunately, for certain companies that are needing cash right now, it may be very difficult. But overall, for the industry, I think it'll come back because we're the industry that's creating the innovation that's saving people's lives and so forth, having a huge impact on society. On the scientific side, I see tremendous advances happening now and have happened throughout my career and will continue to happen over the next decade or so, specifically in the area of cancer as well as autoimmune disease. We have gained a tremendous understanding of how our immune systems work, how they operate in conjunction with other systems in the body. And even though we've only scratched the surface of our understanding of the immune system, we have gained enough knowledge to have dramatic impacts on patients. And there are a number of products out there that mitigate or utilize the individual's immune system to fight cancer. And there are many people alive today that 20 years ago would not be alive because of some of the immunotherapies that we have developed. And we're hoping that, we at Anixa are hoping that our therapies that we're in vaccines that we're developing will have similar impact. And I also think long term, by long term, I mean 10 years, 20 years, I believe there will be a massive increase in products that address cancer utilizing the immune system. So the area of immunotherapy, I think, will eventually replace, certainly augment, and possibly replace the whole field of chemotherapy. Chemotherapy has been something that has been utilized and continues to be utilized today, and it's still the majority of therapies in cancer are chemotherapies as opposed to immunotherapies. But I think that's going to change, and we're sort of heading towards an inflection point. And I guess inflection point is sort of a subjective term because it may take a few years, but we're heading in that direction, and I'm looking forward to Anixa being one of the leaders in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for someone on the other side of the fence to you, I guess someone that does recruitment day to day, the amount of people I speak to on a daily basis that have been laid off from big pharma, some really talented scientists, and it's a really interesting market right now. There's so many good people out there, but it's just a case of where do we put them, because with how difficult fundraising is, there's not that many companies hiring.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a very difficult time for the biotech industry. And I do believe, as I noted, that I think this will change over time. But it's unfortunate for people and companies who have had to shut down or slow down their programs, do very difficult financings, and often not even be able to get financing,
Yeah,
even though their ideas are novel and their scientists are brilliant. Like you, I see unsolicited resumes from many, many scientists, even people who are former classmates of mine
yeah,
at various schools and looking for positions. And they're wonderful, brilliant scientists and physicians, but it's just a difficult time. And so I'm hoping that that changes sooner rather than later,
yeah.
but we'll have to see.
Yeah, and we've touched on, I guess, Anixa and cell therapy, and I guess how hot that's been over the past few years. Do you think, or what other therapeutic areas do you think could emerge over the next few years? I know, obviously, at the moment, radiopharmaceuticals, ADCs have seen a lot of traction. Deals from big pharma. Is there any other areas you think that might really grow over the next few years?
I think all of those areas will grow. Typically, what you see is in biotechnology is you see a great idea that has early success and then seems to not meet the potential that was initially thought to be available to that type of technology. But over years and years of research, scientists understand what are some of the challenges, and then they start making them work. And a classic area is the whole area of monoclonal antibodies, which a few decades, 3 decades ago, was incredibly novel. And the very first monoclonal antibody that was developed to treat cancer was a drug known as Herceptin, which coincidentally was invented at Genentech by a very good friend of mine and an advisor to my company, Anixa, a gentleman named Mike Shepard. And at the time, it wasn't clear that it was going to be a very successful drug, and it became successful, and that spawned a tremendous amount of research in monoclonal antibody work, which for a while didn't yield many successes, but now we have many monoclonal antibodies that are successful. So I think that's going to be the case for ADCs. That's going to be the case for CAR T. That's going to be the case for cancer vaccines. Dot dot dot. And I'm specifically talking right now about cancer, but there's a tremendous amount of research funding going into other diseases which have not had many advances, like CNS. We hear every day that the population in many countries, certainly Western countries, are aging, and Alzheimer's and other cognitive diseases are becoming a bigger challenge, and a lot of research is going into that. Those markets, from a financial standpoint, are very big, and from a societal standpoint, those types of therapies can be very, very valuable. So cancer, diseases of aging, which I guess, by definition, most diseases are diseases of aging, but with a few exceptions. But as we go forward, I think we're going to learn a lot about how to treat diseases of aging, such as cancer, CNS, cardiac disease, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And in terms of, you've had, I think, 3 CEO positions now. What advice would you give to first-time CEOs or even first-time C-level leaders, aspiring entrepreneurs that are looking to enter the biotech industry, and particularly those with innovative ideas and technologies?
Yeah, I think, by definition in biotech, if you're being an entrepreneur, starting something new, you've got an innovative idea. And we all know that in biotech or drug development in general, there are more failures than successes, whether you're at a small company or whether you're at the biggest pharmaceutical companies. And so be aware of that and build a company where you have multiple shots on goal, so to speak, meaning multiple projects if you can finance them. And then the other thing I would suggest is be really careful with your dollars. Raising money is hard in all environments, but certainly very difficult in today's environment.
Yeah.
So try not to burn your cash. And one of the things that I've done at Anixa is built a company with a business model where we're not burning a lot of cash. And that has numerous benefits, not only for us as we go forward with development, but also for shareholders. And you want to keep your shareholders happy. That has numerous benefits for the company, not only from a financial standpoint, but also from a development standpoint. So I think see the big picture, watch your cash, and be aware that many of your products or technologies may fail. So, have backup plans.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, particularly with how hard the market is right now, just to make sure
Yeah,
you have that run rate. I guess biotech's so unpredictable. You don't know when it's gonna drop, and then all of a sudden it goes straight back up. So yeah, I think
that's right.
that's good. I guess if you could look back in time and give some advice to your 21-year-old self, what would that be and why?
Uh, I would have to say that the advice I would give myself at that time is similar to what I just mentioned to your question about young entrepreneurs. Always see the big picture, be aware of what's going on outside your field, because that has impact on your field, not only from a financial standpoint, but also development standpoint. Um, Try and constantly learn as much as you can. Work with people who are incredibly smart and often smarter than you, and try and just be open to new ideas, revolutionary new ideas that other people may not give a lot of credence to. For example, as an example, I'll tell you this. You know, a couple of decades ago, when I was working in venture capital, we would see business plans from scientific founders and business founders who were trying to develop immunotherapies. Um, and at that time, the science was not advanced well enough for us who were financiers to look at those business plans and say, you know what, this is something that's going to work. And so many of those companies did not get funded. And now, 20 years later, we're looking at the therapies that many of those underlying scientific principles have enabled, and they're saving people's lives. So at that time, if some of us had invested in some of those companies, and some did, from a financial standpoint, it would have been a great return, and perhaps we could have increased the rate of development of many of these therapeutics. There are a number of great scientists, some of whom who've won Nobel Prizes now, that in those early days had these ideas for immunotherapy, and they couldn't get funded. I'm not talking about by venture capital, but I'm talking about by the funding agencies like National Institute of Health and so forth. Eventually, they did get funded after a lot of effort, and have resulted in wonderful scientific discoveries that have created innovative new therapies that are saving lots of people's lives. So again, that's a long answer to your question, but it's hard to just come up with one
Yeah.
piece of advice for
Yeah.
20 years.
That's fine. And then my last question, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit.
Okay.
So, if you could have dinner with two either scientists or biotech leaders, past or present, who would they be and why?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. I'll do a little bit different answer to that. You've asked me about biotech leaders, and I've spoken with lots of biotech leaders. As I mentioned, and I know many of them. Uh, or even if I don't know them, I've had opportunity to read their papers and research. So, Judah Folkman is one that I had mentioned earlier. But I would say that if I had a choice to talk to any leaders of, I would love to be able to sit down with Winston Churchill over his cigar and a scotch
Yeah.
and just chat about things like that. So I'm going to answer that question a little bit differently than the way you asked.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Well, look, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. And it sounds like Anixa are doing some great stuff, and certainly a company I'll be keeping my eye on for sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tom. I appreciate it.
Good.